this week's Voice of Business column.
No, we're Thought Thursday.
No. Thought Thursday. All right.
It's Thought Thursday, the podcast about the voice of business.
So this Thought Thursday, our thoughts are about the Ontario Economic Report, which is a signature research piece from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. And they survey businesses. This was done in the fall and gauge their confidence in the economy, confidence in their own business, look at priorities for them. And so this is sort of an annual checkup to see how businesses are doing. And the forecast isn't great.
Yeah.
So
it's not good.
No. The big figure is that it's a record low for business confidence in the Ontario economy. So only 16% of businesses feel confident in our economic outlook right now.
Which is 13% less than 2022.
Yes. Now, businesses are more confident in themselves, slightly, but at least it hasn't followed that downward trend. And so a little over 50% of businesses are confident in their own organization over the coming year. And ultimately, I think that comes down to confidence in what you can control. You know, our Ontario economy is one thing, but it's also part of the national economy. You look around the world and everybody's facing this, and it's kind of this big daunting thing of what the heck do we do next? Like obviously our governments can do things to make things better or worse. But globally, I mean, everybody's dealing with the same thing. And so I think that, I don't know, brings me down.
Yes. Yeah, I was looking at a couple of different articles, and one of the stats that I believe it was Global reported was that Canadians going into this year, 2023, said that 36% of them said that their financial situation coming into 2023 is bad. So that's going to impact our businesses as well, as spending is going to be cut.
Yeah, and I think we can't ignore the impact of interest rates over the last year. Myself, I'm on a variable interest for my house, and it makes me squirm every time the Bank of Canada is making an announcement. And I think a lot of people got into this, and I mean the last decade or more, interest rates they fluctuate a little bit, but you're talking 0.25%, half a percent. A percent would be a biggie. And, we've gone up 4.5% over a year. And so, that hits people. And I think, again, on that confidence part, nobody really knows quite what the next year is going to bring. And, we're in a bit of uncharted territory.
Yeah, those inflation rates definitely put in place to kind of drive down. Or did I say inflation or interest?
Inflation, but we know what you're talking about.
So interest rates, they were put in to lower inflation, which I can agree with as somebody that's trying to get into the housing market. But for those that are already in there, I can see how that's going to be stressful. Because I want to buy a house, but I'm not paying $1 million.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right? We've driven up in interest rates, which has helped lower the cost of living for some items. Going to the grocery store is still a bit expensive, and I know it's tough to see the whole impact of this, but our inflation numbers show I think it was 0.2% in November. And so that's already kind of stagnated. Will prices go down? I don't know, but at least we're not seeing those same month over month huge increases on some of those things. But housing is a big one, right? And there's a whole generation who has yet to enter the housing market. And while prices have, again, stagnated, they've dropped a little bit from its peak. I think, 20-25% locally. But it's still probably double what a lot of first-time home buyers can afford. And then you throw on an interest rate of 6.5%, 7%. And it's, I don't know how people are going to do that. And I think that's where a lot of this lack of confidence for some people is going to come from.
Agreed.
On that level of lack of optimism, I think what is going to be a positive for this year is it's an incredibly strange situation to be going into an economic slowdown, potentially a short recession, with far more job vacancies than we have people to afford them. I can remember back 2008 and, the mayhem of people getting laid off and that uncertainty of, I don't want to spend a cent because I don't know if I'm going to have a job next month. And if I don't have a job, nobody's hiring. And here we're in a situation where everyone is hiring. And I'm not to,
It's slowing down though.
It's slowing down. There was the big number of 1 million vacancies across Canada, and we were there, and that sounded, it's an impressive number, and it's dropped since then, but there's still a big gap. And I don't know that people are going to still feel that same kind of heat that what if I lose my job? I might be out of work for a year while we recover from this. There still seems to be a lot of hiring going on. Now, certain sectors are going to get hit differently, and that might, change some life situations and get people to reskill for some areas that are in a bit more demand. But, I think as we get a clearer picture of what's going to enroll, I think consumer confidence will come up, and that's the big one for business, right? If people are still spending money. We saw this at the start of COVID. No one knew what was going on. Hey, we're going into lockdown for 2 weeks.
Yes.
And
3 years later, here we are.
People held on to their money, and for that first month or two, and then as it became more apparent that this was the long haul and whatever we want to call it, people started spending, and consumer spending went up. They shifted from services to goods, and obviously we know how that unfolded, and if businesses could take advantage of it, some did well and others didn't. But I think we're going to have a similar situation where there still will be significant consumer spending, hopefully.
I hope so. Going back just to the job vacancy things, I agree that we're not going to see as much layoff situations just because we were already in a labor shortage situation. So I think a lot of companies are just going to make do with what they already have and halt their hiring process instead of cutting staff.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the staff to lay off.
Yeah. And there may be some too that just put off those expansions, those growth opportunities while they're waiting to see what all is going to unfold. And part of that, just on that predictability, it's not just about, is my business going to be okay? It's, what is 2024 going to look like? We had our plans. This is how we were going to grow. We've had these big zigs and zags and shifts in how people spend, what the demand is. And so I think some businesses are going to take a good look at trying to reforecast, the next 5 years and figure out what are those growth opportunities, and maybe, bring those investments in a bit later.
Right. So from this whole report that came out, what are kind of our local policy focuses going to be on, and why?
So, Ontario Economic Report, part of that, businesses could put some emphasis on different policy priorities for us. And now we're lumped in with Muskoka's on this. So it's Kawarthas, Muskoka. So it's a bit more of a rural skew than maybe say something that's more oriented for the city of Peterborough. But the biggest, far and above, was broadband access. And again, this lumps onto or piggybacks onto some of the issues of the last few years. And having decent access to high-speed internet is important for businesses. It's important for consumers. It's important for tourism. It's important for every single sector.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it. It's not just your traditional retail and they want to have a store online and be able to engage customers. You're talking about farmers. You're talking mining, construction. They all need access to high-speed internet to make the most of their businesses. And so to see that, over half the businesses surveyed in our area put that as a top priority.
I grew up 15 minutes outside of Peterborough, and I can tell you our internet speeds were hot garbage. So I can see why a lot of people put that as a top priority for sure.
Yeah, we still have areas where we don't have cell coverage, let alone proper high-speed internet.
There's only one cell company that works in the village that I grew up in. So
yeah, and it's expanded, and there are more communities getting online, and the province and the feds are both working towards a 2025 goal of getting everybody or just about everybody connected, but there's still some nuance in how that's going to roll out, whether it's covering the entire areas, if that involves every single house or property that's within those areas. And we're getting into some of that on some policy resolution work too, about how we're tracking that data to make sure that we aren't leaving people behind. And I love going out into cottage country, and I kind of enjoy sometimes having a lack of cell connection on some of these remote lakes, but we're talking just outside city limits.
Yeah.
This isn't just my canoe out on a lake and oh no, I can't get service.
Yeah.
This is places where a lot of people work, live, travel, all of that. Yeah. So and some of the other priorities that they've put forward, continuing to encourage people to travel and shop locally. We, as the Kawarthas and the Muskokas in this instance, have benefited over the last couple of years with borders being closed for the most part, or a lot of hassle, if you will, for traveling. And I mean, there's still a lot of hassle if you want to fly somewhere.
Yes.
And so come to the Kawarthas, right? And that's been, we've been booked solid where we can and what service offerings we can. And so there's still an emphasis to sort of keep up that regional tourism approach.
Yeah. And the incentive last year that was put in place where you could claim some of your travel expenses for traveling within Canada was huge for keeping travel dollars local. But I'd like to see something like that again. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but
having more incentives that way. Another priority for them has been workforce development, and this actually bookends with the tourism issues, and that a lot of our rural operators they have lots of people wanting to come and use their services, their accommodations, their whatever it is that you're coming up there for, but having enough staff, it's enough of a struggle in urban areas. But you get out to rural communities where it's tough to commute, to convince someone to commute half an hour to your destination from, let's say, Peterborough, when there's, again, all these other places that are hiring in between. And so trying to build up a resilient workforce with the skills and use new technology to make that more efficient, it's going to be critical, and not just this year, but moving forward in the future altogether.
I know the hospitality industry took a huge hit during COVID.
Yeah.
We saw so many people retraining and going back to school for other careers, myself included. I left hospitality that I was working in for 6 years, and here I am working in marketing. So I'm
happy to have you.
I just caused a problem somewhere else, but that's not for me to think about at this point.
Yeah. And, hospitality got hit some of the hardest, right? Like they laid off almost their entire workforce for the better part of 2 years.
Yeah.
And there are other areas too, like other businesses, other sectors that basically laid off their workforce and expected that when things bounced back, we'd be able to just rehire and go back to normal. But people moved on. And this idea, I know there's still some people that have this idea, there's this large pool of people that just aren't working right now. And it's just simply not true. People have retired, people have moved on to other careers, that reskilled to something with more stability. Going back to my story from 2008, I used to be a newspaper reporter.
Yeah.
And I survived the recession of 2008. It got me thinking about long term and getting into something a bit more stable. So I think anytime we have these type of economic uncertainties, it causes people to rethink what they're doing. And hospitality has been hit hard with that. Now I know there's a lot of new initiatives through the high schools, through colleges, universities to try and build up, not get back to where we were in 2019, because it was that vulnerable. There were a lot of vulnerabilities to it, but to build it as a stronger sector with as a profession. And not just something that you're just looking for a body to fill that spot, right? That there's people are very passionate about some of these subjects.
Yes. The other ones on here, we have healthcare and mental health. So I know our business summit coming up is going to talk about kind of healthcare, mental health, and whole workplace wellness. So it's a timely topic, I think, to have this as a policy focus as well.
Absolutely. And, again, on this workforce building, a lot of people have left or taken temporary leave due to stress, due to medical issues. And so, I think there's a renewed focus for businesses on investing in the employees that they have. And we're paying more attention to things that we didn't pay attention to in the past that are very important. And I think we're going to not just have employees that stick around longer, but employees that contribute more when they are at their best.
Yes.
And
Happier.
yeah, if you're going
Fulfilling.
through, years of mental health struggles in your workplace, but nobody's ever really paid attention to it, including yourself, you're probably not at your most effective. So let's build up our employees. And we've had some interesting conversations at the provincial and national levels about what role is healthcare in business, because historically it's been fairly separate. Healthcare is a government industry. And here we are. We've just submitted 2 resolutions to the Ontario Chamber of the 4 that we sent in that are around healthcare. And again, like people, we need a healthy workforce.
Definitely.
People also don't want to move if they can't get a family doctor. I'm
Yeah.
hearing from people that have moved to Peterborough and they're still going back to Markham or Hamilton to go see their family doctor because they don't want to get off their roster, go on to the wait list of who knows when.
Yes.
And so, it's just one more barrier for labor mobility. And
even people that already live here and have always lived here, they're losing their family doctors as they retire or move out of the city, and there's nobody to fill those positions and take over the practice.
Yep. Yeah. And I know province is taking a hard look at reinvesting in how we get more people into that system, but you don't go get your certificate to be a doctor in a 6-month online class, right? This is it's a decade of investment to solve this. And so we're working on some things to try and take some of the pressure off of there, some alternatives, get some more of our healthcare professionals who have the skills to maybe upgrade a little bit more and be able to offer just a portion of what you would be able to get through family doctors or at the ER, trying to take away those things that are not essential for them to deal with. But long term, it's definitely a priority for our businesses.
Yeah. Great.
So
the last priority you had was technology adoption. So I just want to shout out the Chamber for coming into 2023 and getting brand new technology. Very excited. So we're following our own policy outlook. Goal, if you will.
Yeah. And there's grants out there to help. We've had grants for the last few years and some new ones as well. So anybody looking to invest more in e-commerce as well, it's your inventory, it's your booking system, it's your staff management, your customer relation systems, it's all of these things. And there are grants to help, but I think that as well, people have moved ahead in leaps and bounds, and it's not been an easy process. And I think some businesses are just probably fatigued a little bit from having to constantly learn more new technology and figure out what's out there. We have some specialists that are available through Digital Main Street just to consult with if you need to talk to someone and sort of run through some ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But it is critical. We're not going back, right? So
yes. Yeah, working at the very start of the pandemic as a digital service squad member and seeing how many businesses we had just in Peterborough and the Kawarthas alone that weren't online. They didn't have websites. They had no social media. It's very pertinent that they implemented. If they didn't over the last 3 years, they need to now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, a significant number did, but it never ends, right? It's like businesses that made a website back in the dawn of the new millennium. If you're still running off that website, you're not in the current era. And I think, we've moved ahead significantly, but it's a constant thing to stay on top of the new technology, find out where your consumers are, find better ways to reach them, more efficient ways. So with the money that you're spending. And dealing with staff too, right? As you're short staff, there's all kinds of things that can help you manage people's schedules, manage your employees better.
Yes.
And it can be daunting to sort of find the time to figure out what's going to work for you. But we do have some programs out there. Hopefully that will help.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
So, the Ontario Economic Report, maybe not the most optimistic report, but I don't think that was ever going to be expected. We all have those feelings, understandings that this next year is going to be different. We don't quite know how, and anytime we have uncertainty, we have a lack of confidence. But think we're in a new situation. I don't know. I'm feeling all right.
Semi-optimistic. Semi. I think for most people, we're going to make it through. I don't think we're going to see a depression per se. Yeah, I'm hoping the businesses that have made it through COVID are resilient enough to survive this as well.
Yeah.
I have faith.
Yeah. I guess where my confidence personally is coming from is I just see, and I sure hope I'm right, the days of shutdowns and service restrictions are behind us. You know, that was very unprecedented. I think the economic ups and downs are a little easier. We have more of a history with that. Sure, it's a different situation than we've had in other years, but in some ways, I think it's better that way.
Yeah.
But the next couple of months are going to be big indicators as new numbers roll in about where our GDP is at and whether we're heading towards a mild recession. But once we get a clearer picture, regardless of what that is, I feel like we'll be able to plan better for the future and confidence will come back up again.
I hope so. Anyway, what are your thoughts? We want to know. Leave your comments below about, I don't know, the economic outlook for 2023, your thoughts. If you're a business, how are you planning to make it through to 2024?
And if you're interested, the whole Ontario Economic Report, which is very light reading.
Super light.
If you're a policy nerd like me, you dig right into it. I love it. But there's a lot there, but there's a link to it in the Voice of Business column if you want to give a deeper read to it.
And if you're a surface skimmer like me, the Voice of Business article covers pretty much anything you need to know from it.
And there's some executive summaries, there's some charts. I will confess I did not read every single word of it, but I went through most of it anyway. There's a lot there.
Wow, unacceptable. Anyway, let us know your thoughts, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Thanks for watching.